G'day, it's Corey McKernan here from Walk With Me Online, brought to you by our Tuesday edition by National Make Good Solutions. Well, today I thought we'd cover off a topic about how we can basically change strategy even when you're doing everything right, that some things don't go your way. And for me, that was when I first got to Carlton. Didn't get off to the best of starts, but I really learned some things about myself and what I had to do, and thankfully I came back and won the best and fairest. So look, check out this latest episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did talking to the guys this morning about it. Head to the website, which is www.walkwithmeonline.com, and you can check out this episode and also future episodes or past episodes, and hope you enjoyed it as much as what I do. See you later.
This is our Tuesday edition of Walk With Me, and thanks to National Make Good Solutions and Stewie Ward at the team there, big long-time supporters of Walk With Me. I know Crofty's on here today, so he's a very good friend of Stew's. Now, what we were going to talk about today was talking about when things actually don't go right, and then how you can actually also, I suppose, pivot and come up with a different plan. Now, it's probably also relevant for you guys. Once again, there's a number of people that are obviously on from Victoria that are, obviously in the currently going through another lockdown again. And then I thought, well, what's when things, sometimes you can do everything right and yet things don't go to plan, and that probably there's probably a few people nodding in agreement at the moment that you can do everything right and sometimes everything doesn't go to plan. So I thought, well, what can I talk about from personal experience where something hasn't gone right and hasn't gone according to plan? Well, I think the one that sprung to mind was way back when I made the decision that things weren't going the way I liked at the North Melbourne Footy Club. And that probably stemmed from a couple of years where I wasn't actually particularly happy. Like, again, I was putting everything into the game the way I always prepared. That's probably one thing I know I can hold my head super high, that I actually prepared. If anything, I over-prepared. That's a whole new different story. So then it was probably for a number of years I actually wasn't happy. It's no different to you guys having a job that you don't like, and you're probably not getting the best out of yourself. That's all it really came down to it. The decision to actually leave North Melbourne. So then I ended up at Carlton. Now, it was interesting. There's little differences between Carlton and North Melbourne. That, look, Carlton, like even now, even though that Carlton haven't had a successful period, one thing that where Carlton's maybe different in their culture compared to North Melbourne is at North Melbourne, I think all the supporters expect that they can probably cop the fact that as long as you have a real red hot go in all the games that you play for, that the supporters is always super appreciative of your effort. I'm not saying at Carlton they're not, but it's one thing at North Melbourne that regardless of how things are going, they will always, they always love the effort side of things. And so there's that side of it. And then at Carlton, well, the period where I went there, so if you said, right after 2001, 2002, I think they might have played in finals the year before, which is things that Carlton did. So they had this real expectation of success, which is actually a great thing, by the way. I think in any organisation to actually expect success. And look, that's all Carlton will end up doing once again. All they do, and we've spoken about that with Richmond, that in the end teams tap into their DNA, and that's all that Richmond did. They found a bit of their DNA about what they stood for. And that was probably the biggest thing with Carlton, that when you go there, it was just, you go in, there's premierships everywhere. They've won 16 premierships. They have this expectation of success. So, you can imagine you go over to Carlton, so there's that aspect of it. I just wanted to give you a bit of a backstory about the difference between the two clubs. Now, when I first got there, obviously you go into a different place. I trained super hard. Though what happened is that I ended up, unfortunately, but I think I had a stress fracture in my foot. But given that I was pretty determined, I didn't want anything to stand in my way about having a successful year. But this is also a lesson too about not having any excuses and always finding a way. You know what I mean? We've always spoken about that, about how we're always going to find a way, and how we always, how can we always find a way to be successful without any excuses? So to give you an idea from a training schedule, what I then took upon, I could have just sat back and said, okay, I've got a stress fracture in my foot. Or what I did, I just made my mind up straight away that I was going to come back fitter somehow than when I had went in with my stress fracture, which was going to be a hard task. But so I remember when I was writing notes to talk to all you guys this morning, that I remember the training that I then undertook. So thinking back, it was actually a pretty crazy training schedule. But you know what? It actually, again, things like, okay, didn't go to plan, but it was a matter of coming up with having no excuses and going, okay, what can I do? So what I did, and I remember thinking back, I remember doing do 1K time trials in the pool for those that have swum. I remember doing 3. I remember getting it up to where I did 3. Now, I'm not the world's greatest swimmer either, by the way. I did 3 1K time trials back to back. I remember I did them in the pool. So my swimming and my breathing, so I wanted to, what would something to really blow up my breathing. So I remember doing 3 1K time trials with only a little bit of break in between. So you're basically doing 3Ks in the pool on the clock. Then the other one I remember doing 10 rounds of boxing on my knees, where I basically on my knees and punch above your head. Now, once you guys finish your walk this morning, you get the chance to actually try and do that. But what it did, I just had a zero excuses mentality. So when I did come back, I not only felt $1 million, I probably look at $1 million too, by the way. But when I came back, it just meant that I was in the best frame of mind possible. I've turned a real shitty situation, which again, we're big on lessons, and I'm not saying that it's the most pleasant of situations that people in lockdowns go through, but how can you that was my mentality. How do you turn a shitty situation into a positive? So when you are ready, that when you come out the other side, you're actually better for the experience. So going into the season, I felt good. But then again, things didn't go to plan. So I remember early days. I remember we played a game at Optus Oval, or then Princess Park. I still know it as Princess Park for the traditionalists on the Zoom call, or people are going to listen to this on the podcast or watch it on YouTube. I remember there was a game early days where we walked off the ground, and it was a unique experience. I'd never had it at North Melbourne, when you came off the ground and there was this real animosity and a real those supporters at the Heatley end, they pretty much I think I remember walking off with Scott Camperelli, and I remember just all the fans over the fence. A few of them had a bit of the spit coming out of them, flying out of their mouths, and they were telling us in no uncertain terms about giving us some real leading team style feedback about how we were going at that point, which wasn't real flash. But then I think everyone sort of has a rock bottom moment. I remember we then played against the arch rival in Carlton. So even in this game, and I think back, I was playing on Dustin Fletcher. The worst thing was for me in this game, I got to the point then that I was trying so hard that I was trying to force it to happen, that I was actually going in reverse. So it's such a funny way in human nature that you can actually try harder and sometimes you actually go worse. Well, this is the case. I was playing on Dustin Fletcher and I was getting to really good spots and getting my hands on the ball, but I just couldn't hold it. And then what happened, I don't know whether there will be people that remember this, that I remember during that game, and I'd never have it in my career, never ever had it happen before, even at North when I didn't have good days, and there are many of them, that then the supporters started on, like, then I started getting the Bronx cheers. And for those who say it doesn't affect you, it does affect you. Like, if I would never ever go to a sporting event, and if that player is wearing my jersey, so I follow Manchester United or the Indianapolis Colts, or I would never ever get to that point where I'd be Bronx cheering people on my own team, but that's a different story. But so then I actually copped all that night. So then I still remember after the game, I remember being in the rooms and I was as low as low after the game. And I remember for some strange reason, there was only me and Phil Pearlstein. So Phil Pearlstein, he was also started off as a bit of he was a doctor now and again at North Melbourne, but he predominantly came to Carlton doctor. So and actually Phil Pearlstein, I can nearly credit with saving my life. That's a story for a different day, how Phil Pearlstein sent me into hospital when no one knew I had a ruptured appendix on Australia Day 1993 and I nearly died. But that's a story for another time. But Phil Pearlstein and I were the only ones left in the rooms. And I distinctly remember, I think even all the trainers had cleared out. For some reason, I went in to see Phil and I was sitting there I don't know what I'd done. But then once I started talking to Phil, I actually then started, I just lost it. Like, I just started crying and just said to Phil, I said, mate, I actually don't know what to do. Like, I'm actually training hard. I've had the best pre-season. I'm essentially doing everything right. And Phil, like Harry and Phil, like, they're all cut from the same cloth, that they're all, not only are they great doctors, but they're just great people and great to talk to. So we had a little bit of a chat, but it wasn't, I think it was more a case of keep your chin up and keep going type stuff. But then I think I went home that night and then I was with my partner at the time. And then I think so you talk about this was probably the moment that then sort of changed it. So I remember on the Saturday morning deciding, like, okay, taking stock, what am I going to do? Because we played Friday night. So this is probably the lesson for all, like, that it was a conversation. You go, well, hang on, what did you used to do? And I sort of said, what did you mean? And you go, well, you think about the way that you guys used to play footy at North Melbourne, where you were pretty carefree. You trained harder than anyone else, but the other part was the enjoyment, the fun. So once I'd had that little bit of a chat, again, I'd recommend it for anyone. Like, if you're going through a tough spot, it's just like talking to your trusted, who's the people in your inner sanctum that you can actually have a good conversation with? And that was probably one of those ones. I remember at the time, to shout out for my little mate, Rodney Groves. I think I went round to Grovesies, and I'm not gonna lie to you. On the Saturday and the Sunday, if I had 10 beers, I had 20, and I'd probably I'm not advocating that you should go out and have a lot of beers as a solution, but it was more I needed it to have a relax, and then just it was more just to sometimes, like I said, you can do everything right, and it was more just to sit down and take stock with someone that you can have a chat through a situation and then and actually work out, hang on, what are the things that you've actually been doing before? I think everyone on this call, we've mentioned we've mentioned this before, that all of you guys know what you've needed to be successful, and that was in my case. So that was the first part of it. By the time I went to training, even though I'd had a reasonably big weekend, but I actually automatically felt better about myself. I had this mindset where I went, hang on, once I sat down, whether it was, having a couple of drinks after the game, not every weekend was going to turn out like that. But then also other little things like, was I playing golf? Was I working away from footy? I remember at the time, the other thing what I did, I'd made up my mind in 2002, was I think on the back of that, I then said, I know Dave Rogers from Challenge, and I'd always done a lot of stuff with kids with cancer with Dave Rogers. And I'd made up my mind. I said, right, for the rest of the year, I'm just going to help out Dave and just go in when I can. And it was amazing how all of a sudden I'd decided, hang on, I've got to get back to playing golf. I've got to start doing things outside of footy, that the whole focus wasn't just footy. I'll come back to the Dave Rogers story in a minute, but then went to training. How was training going to be a little bit different? Probably it wasn't. I'd probably made my mind up I was going to be a bit more of a pest at training and have a bit more fun, either kick balls at Cooter or, Brett Ratton was, he was amazing at training for someone. You can see why now, like the environment that he's creating down at security, you can just see that big smile on Ratz's face. That even before training, Ratz had just loved getting the ball out, kicking around with the guys. So there wasn't anything specific at training, but the other defining moment for me that was a bit of a big game changer, I remember I was the last one off the track. I'd done some extra goal kicking, and I remember, and this is the other part, sometimes you actually need a little bit of luck or a bit of a moment that can actually go your way. So I remember Wayne Britton, he was the last one off the track too. Now, if you think back at that time, as much as I was probably in the gun a bit or a lot, also Wayne Britton was in the gun a bit too. That he was getting pressure as a coach. And he then, as we're walking off together, and again, you never forget these moments because it was such a, I'll try and get out of the wind here, because it was such a great moment that as we were walking off the track, Wayne Britton actually did put his arm around me and he said, mate, he goes, I don't care whether they're going to burn that grandstand down. And he was talking about the Heatley stand at Carlton. He said, I don't care whether they're going to burn that grandstand down. He goes, I'm not going to drop you. And for me, it was such a, I don't know, for me who, and again, I've learnt this through discovery and whatever, where I do love doing things for other people. And like I said, my why about in North Melbourne 1996 was me wanting to win a medal for Lades and Darren Crocker and Ian Fairley and guys that have been in North Melbourne forever. When he said that, I then didn't want to let him down. So even though I'd made up my mind from a mindset point of view that there were things that I needed to change, it was also that you talk about that little bit extra, and I've even got goosebumps talking about it now, that just to have someone, and again, that's probably, whether it's through luck, and I was probably lucky that I did have someone that actually believed in me, but again, whether that's someone in your closest group that can just give you a little bit of a chat or a little bit of a boost, it's worth its weight in gold. So I then walked off the track thinking, well, I'm not going to let this guy down. Like I can't let him down now. So then going into the next game, I know that we played Hawthorn. I think the only other thing that sticks in my mind aside from that, and then I got some really good momentum going. There might have been a centre bounce like early in that game where sometimes the ball bounces up in the air and it comes back your way. Well, what happened? I think there was a centre bounce like that. The ball come back my way and it couldn't have sat there any better. And then I just whacked it. I think I might have whacked it about 20, 30 metres and then charged after it. And it was just all these little things that, yes, I think sometimes that was the whole notion of today. Yeah, sometimes you can do everything right, but it goes horribly wrong. But then it's just a case of actually, I'd say, and taking stock, working out, like talking to your closest inner sanctum, working out what you can actually, as Dennis would say, work out what you've actually got control over. But more importantly, you actually understand by having someone else, and either whether you write it down. So I've written down on my notes today. I'm not going to lie to you, so I can have a reference point. But it's amazing once you sit down and then work out a process that everyone's got a formula for success, whatever. If you haven't, well, then it's a matter of trying to establish your own. But you find that a lot of you now are going to know the things that you need to do and the things that you don't need to do. And then thankfully, that was the start of my momentum. I got on a roll. Like I think I might have kicked for like 40 goals for the year while I was playing in the ruck and playing up forward. There were games like were as good a games I think I'd ever played. I know there was one game against the Western Bulldogs where I kicked 4 goals in the first quarter. But it was, as much as it wasn't a good year for Carlton, it was to be able to, I think the best thing for me, to be able to, from a lot of Carlton supporters who were pretty hard on me early on, to be able to win them over. And I do, to be able to play for one of the big clubs in Melbourne, I was very fortunate. I tell you, the best part about going to Carlton was this, is that I was so fortunate to meet, and I can't speak highly enough of them. There's probably 3, like a holy trinity of the people that I was lucky enough to meet at Carlton. I'll save, maybe it's unfair on the other 2 to save the best one for last, but Craig Bradley and Andrew Mackay, just fantastic guys, and just the way that they went about their footy. Like, so I'll give you an idea in the Tom Brady type conversation, you know what I mean, about age is no barrier. So Craig Bradley at training, I think he was 37 or 38 years old. I remember he went to Brits and said, I can't train tonight. I can't train, or I don't know, he didn't want to train with the group. And so Brits sort of said, okay, you can go and do your own thing. Well, you know what Craig Bradley did? I think that night, he just ran 400s the whole night. Just ran 400 after 400 while we did an hour's worth of training. Like, he must have did 15 or 20 400s. And this was someone at that age that was still prepared to do all the hard yards, still prepared to do the work. It was easy to see why he's successful. The other one was Andrew Mackay. Like, he was just an amazing player and a real fantastic guy as well. But then my favourite, and I am biased, maybe, I don't know, because I seem to like all these types of leaders, and like they're very similar. I say that Wayne Carey, Luke Hodge, Jonathan Brown, they're all guys that I would have dearly loved, or one of them I did actually play a lot of footy with. But Stephen Kernahan was just, I love Sticks. I still love Sticks to this day. All the guys that have ever been, or people have been at Carlton, they all know all the players used to speak about that Sticks is very particular. When he plays golf, he will never wear a hat, doesn't like jewellery, will never wear sunglasses, always drinks Crownies, never ever drinks spirits, never seen him drink spirits. Spirits are a no-no. But I was really lucky. Like, you talk about in the rooms, there were normal games, and even Sticks would be walking around the rooms in the pre-game. And the people at Carlton that actually know this, But even when he was retired and I think he was, around the board or president at that time, to hear that big booming voice pre-game when they were playing the arch rival like a Collingwood or a Carlton or a Richmond, it really made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. So I was really lucky to be able to meet some great people there, and unfortunately, at the end of that particular year, I was lucky enough to win the best and fairest. So really, again, it's sort of a bit like the North Melbourne. It is very similar to the North Melbourne story about, the end result was a medal, but I think it was more a medal. I'm trying to walk away from a lawnmower that seems to be chasing me, guys, so excuse me. It was more a medal. I think when I look back at it, I'm more proud about the fact that I did have to take stock, and that was the whole notion of what we're actually talking about today. I did have to take stock. I did have to change the way I was going about it. I was under the most severe of pressure. And it's one that I look back in fondness that I was able to come through, like to be able to, at the most ultimate of pressure, to be able to change and adapt. And that's probably a huge lesson for everyone at the moment, that, sometimes through these tough situations, these are the ones that actually make you. These are the ones that define you.
Well, thanks for staying right to the very end for more episodes on Walk With Me, which today was brought to you by National Make Good Solutions. Go to our website, which is www.walkwithmeonline.com, and you can check out this episode and plenty of other great episodes, and we'll see you next time.